Well, that was unconstitutional.
전 세계가 한국에 대한 이야기로 뜨겁습니다. 최근 뉴욕타임스는 한국 사회가 윤석열 전 대통령의 계엄령에 대처하는 과정에서 민주주의의 회복력을 입증했다고 전했습니다. 해당 기사에는 미국도 한국으로부터 배울 수 있다. 그들의 용기와 신념은 정말 대단하다. 민주주의를 지켜내기 위해 포기하지 않는 한국인들에게 축하를 보낸다. 그들로부터 배우기를 희망한다라는 댓글이 쏟아졌습니다. 현재 미국 전역에서 트럼프 대통령의 국정 운영에 반대하는 대규모 시위가 일어나는 만큼 해외 방송들은 일제히 한국을 주목하고 있는데요. 미국 CNN은 현장 상황을 생방송으로 전했습니다.
South Korea just kicked its president out of office. We're talking about Yoon Suk-yeol, the one who declared martial law back in December. And what we're seeing right now, a huge range of emotion. Opponents of President Yoon literally dancing in the street, some of them crying. But his conservative supporters, many with Stop the Steal signs, are devastated, saying they think the president is being stolen from them. The bottom line today, South Korea's highest court said when Yoon tried to impose martial law, that violated the Constitution. So he is done being president, effective immediately. And as for what happens now, there's going to be an election within 60 days to pick a new president. Until then, the prime minister is in charge. Yoon, though, still faces a criminal trial for his martial law declaration, and he could ultimately face years in prison. Yoon is South Korea's second president to be removed through impeachment after President Park Geun-hye in March of 2017. And looking ahead, South Korea faces new, stiff U.S. tariffs, so the country will have to elect a new president, one who could go toe-to-toe with the Trump administration.
해외 언론은 이번 탄핵을 단순한 정치 뉴스가 아닌 한 나라의 민주주의가 시험대 위에서 살아남은 나의 드라마로 묘사하고 있는데요. 지난해 비상계엄 사태 후 방화 약탈 폭력이 없는 한국인만의 평화 시위 집회 현장을 가장 먼저 보도한 호주 공영방송 ABC 뉴스는 이번에도 가장 먼저 생방송으로 현장을 보도했습니다.
This is quite the celebration. I'm in the middle of a mass protest filled with people who wanted Yoon Suk-yeol out of office. Many here were confident that they were going to get the result that they wanted. And indeed, they didn't have to wait long for the Constitutional Court to start rubbishing the justifications behind that martial law decree. And when the unanimous decision was finally announced, the crowd here erupted. Martial law is meant to be reserved for the most extraordinary and extreme of circumstances. Ultimately, the Constitutional Court has ruled there was no justification, and the decision to send the police and the military down to the National Assembly to try and block politicians from entering and voting down the decree, well, that was unconstitutional.
Finally, a chance for our democracy to come back to life.
Lawyers for the impeached president have already attacked today's ruling, labelling it a political decision. But this is the end of the road for Yoon Suk-yeol, whether his backers accept it or not. The decision to declare martial law is meant to be reserved for the most extraordinary of circumstances. And when Yoon Suk-yeol did this last year in December, he only cited vague North Korean threats. In reality, it was a desperate attempt of a power grab to try and get some power back from the opposition-controlled parliament. Now, today, there was a unanimous decision from the Constitutional Court that there was no justification for this.
There's been a lot of protest action in and around this issue. Can you describe the mood on the ground there?
Well, where I am, I'm in the anti-Yoon protest. This is far bigger protest than those who support Yoon Suk-yeol, but it should be noted he does have he has had quite a big boost in numbers backing him. But at this protest, there is nothing short of jubilation and celebration. There was a huge eruption of people cheering when the final announcement was made, but people here were pretty confident to begin with, and it really didn't take long for the Constitutional Court to start rubbishing the justification for martial law. So it did not take long for these people to start to realise that Yoon Suk-yeol was going to be kicked out of office. The concern was is towards those who are unhappy with the decision. There are some 14,000 crowd control police officers that have been deployed across Seoul to try and manage crowds. So these people here are happy, but there has been concern about those who support Yoon Suk-yeol, especially because many have grabbed onto conspiracy theories to try and justify their reason to support the president. And there is a refusal almost to accept what the court was going to say today, and there might even be a refusal to accept now the next presidential elections, because what happens next is within 60 days, South Korea has to elect another president. So while President Yoon Suk-yeol is out of office now, maybe his supporters will then target the next presidential election and seek to undermine its legitimacy. So while today there has been no unrest that we are aware of, the concern now is for the election, which has to happen, as I said, in about 60 days.
어제에 이어 오늘도 해당 뉴스를 다시 전했습니다.
South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol has been removed from office 4 months after controversially introducing martial law. The country's constitutional court ousted the leader, saying he was violating his duty as commander-in-chief. It means South Koreans will head back to the polls to elect a new president.
It was a nervous wait. At 11 a.m, the city stopped to watch, and then this. It was a fine line between joy and emotion. So much, they felt, was at stake.
Just a wonderful day for Korean people, and not only for Korean people, but also for all over the world who is working for democracy.
It was only in December that his sudden declaration of martial law blindsided this nation. He now faces criminal prosecution, his reputation battered.
There is a real sense of jubilation here, but there is relief too, because amidst the party atmosphere, there's a sense that people felt they were on something of a precipice, that if this hadn't gone their way, the consequences would have been far more broad than just who holds power.
Hearing Kim Sung-wook's name here, a man who says freedom itself was at stake. He was the only member of Yoon's party to defy instructions and vote on his leader's impeachment.
The history of South Korea's democracy was built on the blood and struggle of the Korean people. We decide today whether we can defend our democracy or whether our democracy will fail.
This country's authoritarian past weighs heavy in memories here. It explains the high emotion and the high degree of readiness. In the end, there was no violence amongst those left disappointed. But there was division and disaffection in Spain.
영국 BBC도 생방송으로 전했습니다.
We start in South Korea, where the Constitutional Court has upheld the impeachment of President Yoon Suk-yeol. The decision means he's been removed from office and elections will be held within 60 days. The judges unanimously found Mr. Yoon's short-lived attempt to impose martial law last year violated the Constitution. The declaration in December sparked chaos before it was overturned by Parliament and Mr. Yoon was impeached. These were the scenes on the streets of Seoul as critics of Mr. Yoon celebrated when they heard the decision.
It's been a remarkable day here in South Korea, and you can't underestimate how big a deal this is for the president, for that impeachment ruling to be upheld. Now, that verdict came in just over 2 hours ago when the 8 justices, all sat in the building just behind me, decided unanimously to uphold that impeachment charge. Now, when that moment happened, when they announced that, there was loud cheers that we could hear, even though there is a 150-meter cordon around where I am at the Constitutional Court. I could still hear where the protests were being carried out. I could still hear a loud cheer erupt from all those that wanted this impeachment to be upheld, that wanted President Yoon to be taken out of office. And there is a celebratory mood amongst those supporters of that decision to impeach President Yoon that we were showing earlier. Now, there are, of course, those pro-Yoon supporters that wanted to see the impeachment overturned. There's a whole line of flowers dedicated to President Yoon just to my left, lining up the wall of the Constitutional Court, all saying President Yoon does not deserve to be impeached, saying that President Yoon should remain as president. But for those supporters, they have been left dejected and deflated by this Constitutional Court's ruling. Now, there had been a significant police presence here in Seoul, and there still is. 14,000 police were mobilized to make sure that whatever the verdict was going to be, that there wasn't going to be any disruption, there wasn't going to be any violence. And now the pressure in South Korea had been ramped up with the time that had passed since the last hearing by the Constitutional Court up until the decision. It was about 38 days. Now, when Park Geun-hye was impeached back in 2017, that time was only 11 or so days. So the further this got stretched out and drawn out, it really did sort of amplify the stakes and the tension here in South Korea. But that tension has now been broken by this decision by the Constitutional Court.
Night that stunned the country and the world. Troops stormed South Korea's parliament as the president ordered a military takeover.
비상계엄을 선포합니다.
This evoked ghosts of Korea's violent, authoritarian past. The people and politicians resisted, forcing Mr. Yoon to retract martial law just 6 hours later. In the days that followed, hundreds of thousands took to the streets until Parliament voted to suspend him. Today, the courts have upheld that decision. After months of deliberation, Mr. Yoon has been permanently removed from office. This was a desperate gamble by a deeply unpopular president. Once a successful prosecutor from a well-off family, Mr. Yoon proved to be an ineffective politician. He clashed with his powerful opposition party, accusing them of paralysing the country. John Linton is a Conservative politician who's close to the president.
In his toolbox, he saw this martial law as a method for punishing the opposition. From logically or reasonably speaking, it was a poor decision, it lacked wisdom, and he is paying the consequences for it now.
Mr. Yoon is also facing life in prison. He's been charged with insurrection in a separate ongoing criminal case.
한일 관계와 관련해 이를 주시하던 일본 NHK 글로벌 방송도 이를 자세히 보도했습니다.
Can you describe the moment the ruling came out?
Well, Keiko, I was in the middle of the pro-impeachment crowd when the judge announced the decision. Everyone there started screaming and cheering. They had been out all night, both sides, for and against Yoon, staged overnight rallies. But like you said, this has been a months-long process. For many here, it feels like the martial law incident has finally come to a close.
I'm so happy. All the built-up stress was blown away. Everyone here must feel the same.
But that doesn't mean everyone is happy with the result. Plenty of Yoon supporters were also out today hoping for good news. Some were openly crying when the judgment came out.
We will fight to protect our sovereignty together with the president to protect democracy.
Yoon's own People Power Party said they accept the court's decision. They also apologized to South Koreans, saying they failed to fulfill their role as the ruling party. On the other hand, the Democratic Party expressed deep gratitude. They called the ruling a victory for the people and the revolution of light.
Now that Yoon's impeachment motion has been upheld, what's next? What will happen to him?
It means he's ousted immediately. So Yoon has to vacate the presidential residence and go back to his private home. Yoon will go down in history as the second president to ever be removed from office. As for the man himself, despite the concerns and division his martial law declaration caused, Yoon had been mostly silent. He finally said yesterday for the first time he would accept the court's decision. Soon he'll face his next test, a criminal charge of inciting insurrection. That is still going to go forward even if he's not the president. But it remains to be seen whether today's division will heal the divide that's plagued South Korea for months.
인도 방송 위온 글로벌도 해당 소식을 생방송으로 전했습니다.
And it's been a historic day for South Korea's politics. The speculation around ousted President Yoon's future has been put to rest. In a unanimous decision, South Korea's constitutional court has upheld Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment.
Respondent President Yoon Suk-yeol is impeached.
Thousands were eagerly waiting on the streets of Seoul. They broke into tears and applause and celebration as soon as they heard the verdict. The Constitutional Court ruled that Yoon's declaration of martial law on the 3rd of December last year violated the country's constitution as it obstructed the National Assembly's authority. The court further said Yoon did not merely declare martial law, but went on to commit acts that violated the constitution and the law. Soon after the ruling, Yoon Suk-yeol apologized. The impeached president expressed his regret and heartbreak for failing to meet expectations. The opposition welcomed the verdict, saying it is the people who have reclaimed the country. Now, the law states that elections need to be held within 60 days. Authorities have lowered the presidential flag at the office of the president, signaling a new chapter in South Korea's political landscape.
CNN은 대한민국의 대통령이 계엄령을 선포한 지 4개월 만에 파면되었습니다라는 제목의 기사에서 한국의 상황을 수개월간 이어진 불확실성과 정치적 갈등 속에서도 국민들이 평화와 질서를 지키며 끝까지 민주주의의 원칙을 포기하지 않았다고 평가했습니다. 특히 계엄령 당시 상황을 보도하면서 대규모 군중이 거리로 쏟아졌지만 폭력 대신 질서로 응답한 한국인들의 행동은 전 세계 민주주의 국가들이 주목할 만한 성숙한 시민혁명이었다고 극찬했습니다. 영국 가디언은 윤 대통령의 계엄 선포로 촉발된 공포가 파면으로 해소됐다는 제목의 기사에서 이 역사적인 결정은 한국 민주주의가 걷는 여정에서 중요한 순간으로 기억될 것이라고 의미를 부여했습니다. 그리고 한국인들의 환호는 단순한 정치적 승리가 아닌 오랜 시간 민주주의를 지켜온 자신들에 대한 자부심의 표현이었다고 전했습니다. 이번 외신들의 긴급 보도는 지난해 계엄령 선포 이후 한국인들이 자유민주주의를 지켜내기 위해 얼마나 치열하게 싸워왔는지를 전 세계에 강렬히 각인시켰습니다. 탄압과 공포의 그림자가 드리운 가운데서도 침묵하지 않았던 한국인들은 거리로 나와 헌법의 가치를 외쳤습니다. 외신들은 그들은 총칼이 아닌 노래와 춤, 양심과 법치, 평화로운 저항으로 민주주의의 순결을 끝끝내 지켜냈고 세계는 그 장면 앞에 경의를 표했다고 전했는데요. 국민이 민주주의를 어떻게 지켜낼 수 있는지를 온몸으로 입증한 대한민국에 전 세계가 찬사를 보냈고 이제 대한민국의 다음 걸음을 예의주시하고 있습니다. 여러분의 소중한 의견을 남겨주세요. 바쁘시더라도 구독과 좋아요 부탁드립니다. 시청해주셔서 감사합니다. 앞으로도 더욱 노력하여 유익하고 재밌는 콘텐츠로 찾아오겠습니다. 지금까지 단골이슈였습니다.